30,000 people roaring in unison. The Madison Square Garden crowd on their feet. Then, everything stops. Brock Lesnar, the literal human wrecking machine who's demolished every single person put in front of him for nearly 2 decades, is being carried out on a stretcher. Not walking, not limping, being transported like he's suffered catastrophic damage. And the person responsible? A man who 6 months ago was being groomed as a secondary tier heavyweight, suddenly elevated to destroyer of empires. Femi just changed the entire trajectory of WWE's power structure in one night, and the backstage aftermath might have been even more intense than what happened inside the squared circle. Let's break down what this moment means, why this speculative scenario would reshape everything we understand about how WWE builds its top stars, and why the real story of this fictional encounter extends far beyond the final bell. Brock Lesnar's entire character arc has been built on one fundamental principle: he cannot be broken. Since his return to WWE, he's been positioned as this unstoppable entity. He's faced some of the greatest wrestlers of all time, and even in defeat, there's always been this underlying suggestion that he's still dangerous, still a threat, still someone who can't be completely dismissed. Roman Reigns managed to overcome him, but even that victory came with layers of complexity. Lesnar's a former UFC heavyweight champion, a legitimate athlete with credentials that supersede most other wrestlers. That legitimacy is his greatest weapon. But what if all of that gets systematically dismantled by someone the industry hasn't fully accepted at the main event level yet? That's where Femi enters this narrative as something truly revolutionary. He's not an established main event player. He's not someone who's been groomed for years with championship reigns and main event storylines. He's the perfect vehicle for what wrestling calls a paradigm shift. Consider the psychology of this moment from a pure storytelling perspective. You're sitting in Madison Square Garden, arguably the most historically significant wrestling venue in the entire world. The atmosphere is electric. The anticipation is at maximum. And then you watch, in real time, someone you might have written off just months earlier systematically dismantle someone you've been conditioned to believe is genuinely unbeatable. The psychological impact on that crowd is immense. They're watching mythology crumble in front of their eyes. Here's what makes the stretcher moment so narratively powerful: it's the ultimate visual storytelling device in professional wrestling. When someone walks out of the ring on their own, there's dignity in defeat. There's a suggestion that they can recover, that they'll be back stronger, that this is just one chapter in an ongoing saga. But a stretcher? A stretcher says something completely different. It says the human being you just watched cannot move under their own power. The medical team has to intervene. The injury is so significant that his body literally cannot function independently. In wrestling psychology, that's the most complete form of victory. That's not just winning a match. That's destroying someone so thoroughly that their physical form cannot support them anymore. Think about the backstage aftermath in this scenario. Brock Lesnar would be absolutely furious. He's not the type of competitor who takes defeat well under any circumstances, but losing to Femi at Madison Square Garden, of all places, and being stretchered out? That's not just a loss. That's humiliation on the biggest stage against someone from an unexpected direction. The entire locker room would be talking about nothing else. Veterans who've worked with Lesnar for years would be reassessing everything they thought they knew about him. Younger guys would be looking at Oba with completely different eyes. The ripple effects through the Judgment Day would be seismic. Whatever program Lesnar had been building toward gets disrupted. AJ Styles, Mami Sakura, whoever else is tangled up in that faction's narrative would suddenly have to deal with their heavyweight getting completely dismantled. Does the faction fracture because of this? Does someone use Oba's shocking victory as leverage? These are the kinds of storyline implications that make wrestling so compelling. Now let's talk about what this does for Femi's character development. He goes from promising young heavyweight to legitimate main event threat in a single night. The guys at the top of the card can no longer look at him as someone to avoid or dispatch easily. He's proven at the highest level that he can defeat the most dangerous human being on the roster. That's a career-defining moment. That's the moment a wrestler transcends prospect status and becomes an actual player in the main event picture. Imagine the United States Championship picture after this. Imagine any title program Oba gets into moving forward. Everyone knows now that he's not just big and strong, he's a finisher. He's someone who can end main event level matches decisively. That changes how opponents approach him. That changes how announcers talk about him. That changes how the audience perceives him when his music hits. The beauty of this narrative is how it honors professional wrestling's most fundamental storytelling function, using the product to build new stars. Wrestling's greatest historical moments often involve one established force being used as the launching pad for the next generation. The audience needs to believe that the old guard is passing to the new guard, and the only way they'll truly believe it is if they see it. They need to witness the changing of the guard with their own eyes. Madison Square Garden as the location amplifies everything about this moment. The Garden isn't just a wrestling venue, it's hallowed ground. It's where wrestling history gets written. Andre the Giant had defining matches there. Hulk Hogan had watershed moments there. The Undertaker had legendary encounters there. If Femi defeats Brock Lesnar at Message and has him stretchered out, he joins the pantheon of wrestlers who had their career-defining moments in that iconic building. He becomes part of wrestling lore. He becomes the subject of commentary for decades to come. Think about how this plays on television and through the wrestling community in the weeks following. The backstage segment where medical staff is checking on Lesnar would be appointment viewing. The promo where Oba addresses what he's accomplished would define his character for the next phase of his career. The conversation between Lesnar and the management about what comes next becomes central to WWE's narrative direction. One match, one moment, one stretcher, and suddenly everything shifts. The storytelling potential extends even further. Does Lesnar come back seeking revenge? Does he move to a different program entirely? Does this loss potentially work toward building Lesnar toward a future main event that centers on redemption and reclaiming his dominant status? Or does this mark a genuine transition point where the Beast steps back and allows the next generation to take the spotlight? All of those paths become possible because of what happened at Message with Oba. What makes this scenario so perfect from a professional wrestling narrative standpoint is that it doesn't require anyone to be buried or degraded. Lesnar's legacy remains intact. He's still the Beast. He's still a legitimate main event wrestler who belongs in championship programs. But he's also just been the vehicle that launched someone special into the stratosphere. And in wrestling, that's actually a sign of respect. It means you're trusted with the responsibility of elevating the future. For Femi, it's validation on a level he couldn't have earned any other way. You can have the biggest entrance, the best physique, the most impressive wrestling ability, but until you defeat someone unquestionably established at the top level, the audience doesn't fully believe in you yet. That stretcher moment gives them the proof they needed. It transforms Oba from a prospect into a presence, from a possibility into a probability. This is what makes professional wrestling the most compelling form of storytelling and entertainment. One moment, one match, one visual can alter the entire trajectory of careers and narratives. That's the power of this medium. That's why fans are drawn to it so intensely. Because they get to witness genuine paradigm shifts, genuine moments of change, genuine turning points that ripple through everything that comes next. If you're fascinated by how wrestling narratives intersect, how new stars are created, how single moments can reshape entire rosters, and how the storytelling language of professional wrestling tells stories that no other medium can quite match, then you need to subscribe to WWE Express. We explore these deep narrative layers, these speculative scenarios, and these character psychology angles that make wrestling the greatest story-based sport in the world. Subscribe to WWE Express, and thanks for watching.